Good evening, everybody. I've got to get onto the spaces. Where's my mind at? Doing other things. Oh man. Bear with me, guys. I got to go to the Telegram and grab the spaces link. It's like doing two things at once. It's difficult. Good evening.
What's up, Banana? How are you?
I'm doing good, Zen. How are you doing?
Good.
Super.
Another day.
Yeah. On the PulseChain, it's going to have its run one day, one glorious day. But it's not going to happen in a day, you know. It's going to be, it's going to hit us suddenly, probably. It's going to hit us suddenly that it happened. Oh, this run happened 3 months ago. Here we're going to look back. And it's going to be like, oh yeah, here we are. You know?
Yeah, it's all getting set up for the move. I was literally just watching a video today of RiskReward, and it was when Hex was, Hex was at like 20 cents, and he was talking about how when Hex was at like close to all-time lows, people were barking at him and FUDing and say he was like listing all the FUD things that came out. A lot of them were like the exact same ones. He's like, 1 month it was this, 1 month was this, 1 month was that. He goes, the last one, it was interesting. He says, like, one of the last ones was there's no liquidity there. There's no liquidity there. And what he was saying in the video was, well, we're at the bottom. There's not meant to be a lot of liquidity there. You shouldn't be selling. And he goes, and with the lack of liquidity there, it makes it that much easier to send price to high levels, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just lack of text on the market to purchase. And it reminded me a lot of where we are right now. We've kind of seen the different FUDs coming out. You know, we've heard a bunch throughout the few years, but we kind of hear some right now too. But then we have that liquidity thing going on. There's very little liquidity. And I've even heard that come up, like, hey, there's not a lot of liquidity for the whole entire thing. But the point is like, really, no one should. You can do whatever you want, right? The market has liquidity to do it. But he was talking about how the liquidity at the bottom isn't that big of a deal, because when price starts moving up, people are putting in value to get the assets. So they're pushing the liquidity higher as, you know, the asset goes to higher levels, which then gives users the ability to exit as new people are coming in. So he was saying like, hey, you shouldn't worry so much about what the liquidity is at the bottom, but focus on getting the new users in to where if you do want profits, you're more exchanging value with the onboards that you help bring in, or the etc.
Yes, of course.
Which is a good way of looking at it, you know.
Yeah.
I think some of that stuff relates to us, you know, people who are in the system who possibly will take profits in the future. I don't think everyone's holding forever, right? So those are good points in the system to take profits. Is when there is a new inflow of people coming in, those new people are going to be looking for your pTGC. I do hope a lot of us stay around for as long as PulseChain. I also am realistic and understand that some people have some things maybe in life they want to get paid off or get ahead on, etc. That's a good point to do it, right? When you can feel the new onboards not only coming to pTGC, but when you can feel that volume and that flow of energy flowing into PulseChain, it's not so much like selling into the low liquidity, right? pTGC kind of doesn't have low liquidity already, but when price goes higher, the liquidity will increase, and then there'll be that demand, that bid on the ask. So even if you sell into the pump a little bit, it most likely is just going to get absorbed right back up from that wall of demand that hopefully comes in to not only pTGC, but the whole entire PulseChain system.
Yeah.
And in this video, he was bringing up, this is why it was interesting, that just months prior, like literally just months prior, he's like, we were at lows, right? Everyone was negative. Everyone was not believing. And just months later, we're flying, and there's not even enough hex on the market for everyone. People are like begging for price to go down. There's buy walls that are like 20% cheaper of millions of dollars with V3 liquidity and also limit orders and stuff like that. So it was just kind of cool to, watch that video when hex was kind of pumping. And he brought out, like, when prices are down, you do hear those negative things. But then, sometimes low liquidity is good for price pumping. And at that time, he was saying there was like 13 million in liquidity with hex when it was at 20 cents on that video date. And he was talking about pretty much hex had no liquidity from launch. That's what he was talking about. He's like, no one really adds liquidity with hex. The reason there's liquidity there is because people are buying hex and putting their value in the liquidity pool and getting out the hex, right? And that builds up liquidity as it pushes up. So,
right.
I don't know, just interesting videos watching today.
Yeah. So, for many of us, I'm sure listening have, joined, entered crypto at the top of the last cycle. I'm sure there's a bunch of people because I've met so many. So we were exit liquidity when we came in for everybody that was already here. Well, now it's our turn. It's our turn to, for people coming in. And I mean this kindly. I don't know how can you say this kindly? But, people coming in, they're going to be exit liquidity for some of the people that have been here for a long time. And I was having a conversation with somebody about, the people that are here right now, earlier today. And I was just commenting that, we are the OGs of this cycle, and we're about to be rewarded. That's wonderful. But we need to, I was telling this guy, I said, yeah, we need to like be careful that we don't, we don't want to mislead anybody. And then we want to set a good example for everybody coming in. We want to help them acclimate to crypto. And he was in agreement. This gentleman was in agreement with me. And he had some feedback on that same topic that really spoke to me. We were of the like minds in that context.
Yeah, I think, it's not a bad thing for an early person to take a little profits and better their life. They obviously took a little bit more risk and they deserve a little bit of reward. The person coming in a little bit later is most likely has a lot more liquidity, a lot more data, a lot larger community where there is a little bit less risk. I do think that's why it's also important if you care to have, some bit of integrity. I get that there's tons of gambling that goes on in crypto, but for me, if you actually believe in the product long term, you believe it's sustainable, if you believe it's going to last multiple cycles, it's okay that those users did not get as good of a deal you did because you were the one here that was throughout the whole bear digging for the gems, right? These new users are going to come in when the media attention is on crypto, when everyone's flowing into crypto, and that's just how the cycle works, right? The green candles come, it onboards retail, the retail comes in. But that's why I think it's awesome to have a product that is sustainable and you believe, right? There's no guarantees, but I personally believe that pTGC has the mechanics and the systems to then go and make higher high every cycle after, which that's what's really important, right? Yeah, maybe Banana takes a little bit of profit and maybe onboards someone a little higher than he got into. But Banana also put in a lot of work and also took a little bit more of a risk when it was a smaller community. And if Banana believes in the protocol long term, this is probably still a great entry point right now or 3 months from now, and so on and so forth, wherever this event takes place.
Yeah. Paydays.
Interesting way of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
There is only so many tokens on the market. pTGC in particular, because it isn't inflationary, it's deflationary, and every new user has to also compete with the DAO in the code, which is buying alongside them. Even the users who do leave, let's say Banana leaves, he has to pay the system and he has to make the foundation stronger for the new users that come later.
So amazing.
There's a lot of things within pTGC to ensure a healthy environment for people who come later on. I think that's really going to, I I hope it changes how assets exist, right? Like the huge amount of effort put in people who don't find out about it in the early days, but still get an awesome opportunity for the asset to continue to go up with systems in place. Even if earlier people decide to leave, those early people have to make the system even stronger as well, right?
Yeah. Then Banana, I got that. Yeah, just chiming in on that discussion. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
I hear you.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, you know what? I'm gonna because I'm with you, Banana. I feel the same way. You know, when we last got in the last cycle, we were the exit liquidity, and that's just the way that the cycles have played out over since the genesis of Bitcoin. Have a think about it this way, and this is why I originally got into crypto, and I still believe it even more today, is the fact that there's the idea of a wealth extracting system, and the wealth extracting system, and this is me taking my blinkers off and really taking a step back. So I don't want to get into this too much because it's very idealistic and globally idealistic, but a wealth extracting system is essentially a global financial system today, where for some reason the rich keep getting richer and the poorer keep getting poorer, and the reason that happens is because they're deflating. They're inflating the dollar by debasing the dollar, which means they're printing too much money, and we're all aware of that. That's why we're all in crypto. So that's your wealth extracting system, because you're basically, to make people rich, you're just making the poorer even poorer. But then there's this idea of a wealth generating system, and this goes back, and I think Crypto Heartbeat really he hits on this. I don't know if you've heard many of his discussions or his podcasts and his spaces, but he really hits on this quite like he hits the nail on the head with the wealth generating system. And a wealth generating system is completely opposite to a wealth extraction system, where you have to extract from other people to become wealthy. What happens with the wealth generating system is that everyone in the community is aware of how valuable the community is, or that system is, and with I guess the support of the community or the system itself, the wealth comes not from destroying others. It comes from the support of the entire system, financial system, growing and growing. So what that is I'm just going to make a little bit of an analogy here, or I guess make some similarities to what maybe Richard Hart might be trying to do with the whole PulseChain, decentralized financial system. If Richard Hart is able to somehow, and I'm not saying it's going to be PDI, or it may or may not be, or maybe other states, if he is really able to, at some point in the future, create a stable coin that is not backed by the US dollar, then what happens there is that everyone who makes wealth won't want to extract it straight away, or they may not want to extract it, at all, or just take small amounts off the top to be able to live their lives. But the wealth is actually better placed in the system to stay in the system, because it's creating yield on top of that. And that comes back to the idea of not killing the golden goose. And that's where I think you can relate this to then, if PulseChain is able to do that as an ecosystem, and then pTGC we know is the golden goose, within that, as the index token on all the core tokens, then you don't have a wealth extracting system anymore, and you don't look at it like as if, we're having to use the new people or the new investors that come in as they're the exit liquidity when we're taking profits. You're actually keeping your capital, your initial, you're earning yield on the top of it. People see the benefit of that wealth generating ecosystem, and they add their economic energy to that, and everything just grows instead of destroying others. So I know it's a very idealistic thing, but if you look at it from the highest of high levels all the way down, if you know, if PulseChain and RH can somehow create a stable coin, because we know the stable coin is a big thing this cycle, it's becoming a big thing, then it doesn't become that way anymore. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
yeah, obviously in a perfect world, you can create systems to where everyone can get paid out and price continues to go up and every user enters in and it keeps going up. Obviously being paired with things that are getting devalued every single year by more and more doesn't help that situation unless the value is flowing into the asset that you hold. But, you know, even with pTGC, technically people could just buy and hold and all of the value that we have in this specific system would be working for the holders and everyone could still get paid, right? And then users could take that APY and live their life. The more X's we do, the more APY everyone would receive, which then makes it to where the older holders would be making more and newer holders would have to kind of stay in the system a length of time until they get to a level to where the system gets large enough to pay them enough to, you know, also get paid a decent amount, or they have to come in with a decent amount of capital to hit those thresholds, right? If you come in with smaller amounts for ethical APY, you have to come in with a decent amount of money to hit the higher numbers to make the APY livable, depending on where you live, or you have to stay in the system long enough for the system to do X's to revalue your investment, right? And then you have more value working.
Totally, Zen. And I'm not disagreeing that the investors need to come in and they need to look at it as a long-term investment where, you know, you have to spend time in the system for it to be able to create wealth for you, that you're able to start, you know, taking profits on the top of that. But getting away from the idea of having to sell, you know, as soon as the price goes up, sell everything and destroy the newcomers that come in straight away. I think that if there's ever a time for, you know, for that type of system to be completely, you know, cut and broken, and then a whole new type of financial system born, you know, we're at the precipice of it. I really do think that potentially, you know, could be the time for the whole PulseChain ecosystem. But
I think one of the problems with that is that the crypto space has turned into, and it's kind of always been this way, right? Like if you go back in time, like even the projects that came out 4 or 2 cycles ago, all of them are gone for the most part. 99% of projects usually fail because they didn't hit all the marks. So I think that's why people in crypto have been mentally programmed to sell at a certain amount of X's, right? They'll get up 5X, 10X, and like just sell the whole bag or 99% of it. And they don't want to actually see things out long term. And, you know, and that's somewhat reasonable because of how many systems have actually failed. Again, like if you rewind 5 years ago when all these things came out, you know, for Bitcoin, or 10 years ago for Bitcoin, you're better off just holding Bitcoin, right? So I think mentally programmed, a lot of people get up X's and then they sell. And I agree with you, right? This is what I think a lot of people are afraid of on PulseChain right now, is that it's going to go up some X's and a ton of people are just going to, you know,
immediately just take profits and run.
But if we can actually create a sustainable system here on PulseChain with sustainable assets and actually kind of break that cycle, what we can create is a place where people actually want to store their value because it's a better store of value than what exists in the real world, right? Like, look how people look at some of their stock accounts. They'll take portions of their paycheck every single month and add to it and add to it and add to it. And they're not ever looking to actually exit those profits at a certain amount of X's. They're looking for it to actually get to a dollar amount in the future that they could possibly live freely on, right? And that's the goal of financial freedom. What we need here, and this is kind of what you're tying to, is we need some products to actually prove themselves as being sustainable, as being able to test time. And hopefully Richard has a few things in the works as well to create almost like a little bit of separation between our assets and the rest of everything that's going on. Maybe a little less risk would be a lot. I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of right now in the PulseChain community is they've put a lot of capital up for a portion of their life savings up, and it's currently really far down, right? That's difficult to mentally hold on to. So that's why
it is. And we're not saying for people to not take profits. Like, you've got to protect yourself as well. So, as the market starts moving up, obviously everyone's going to be in the mindset of wanting to take some profits along the way to cover themselves. And we're not saying not to do that, but the mentality of taking, trying to take absolutely everything out at a certain point, well, there's two risks there. One, that you actually miss out on the major run of the cycle because it just keeps going on, and leaves you behind, and you end up buying in a much higher price because you feel like you're missing everything out. Or the fact that you don't need to take it all out, and the fact that it is actually creating and generating wealth for you, and that ties it fantastically back to pTGC and UFO because of the yield. Like, the yield is probably one of the best yields that you can find across the entire crypto space at the moment, and that it's constantly growing, as we all know. So it's just, so Banana, I'm with you there 100%, man. I'm like, I was ex-Liquidity last cycle, and that's still in the back of my mind, but I know that this is like a completely different asset that I've ever held before. It's a different ball game here. And it's the fact that, I'm not going to want to kill the golden goose. I'll take my profits off the top. I'll make sure, me and my family are safe in terms of, our real world financial position. But yeah, the investments on what I have in PulseChain, Hex, and pTGC moving forward, I want to make sure that those stay in the system and grow. And I've got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping and praying that Richard Hart does have that, he's got that trick up his sleeve where the stablecoin narrative is a real thing, and whether it comes through, EDI, or whether it comes through something else, that might be the break from the real financial system, the real world financial system, and we really do get to be able to keep a majority of our value in this ecosystem, in this sub-ecosystem, and feel safe, which, I still have high hopes.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things is like really the huge, like, I think pTGC's done fairly well as proving of what mechanically it does, even on a blockchain that's going downwards, right? But like, even at a certain point, we are in a very risky place. We're in crypto, right? And only 2 years is not that amount of time, or not that long of amount of time. Like, look at how long it took for governments and massive companies to start getting involved in Bitcoin. It took over 10 years.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
So it does take time, in the general population or the largest companies, they do want to see what it turns into, and they're not willing to risk the large amounts of value in the early days. But as time goes on, and as it proves to do what everyone believes it does, they do start to bring over large amount of capital to store it in better assets, really. Like, you see this going on with Bitcoin right now. They're taking large lump sums of value and storing it in something that isn't hyperinflationary, that just gets printed, that actually has a capped inflation and has value backing it and demand, etc. For pTGC, I do wonder, like, what's it going to take for those type of situations that start taking form, right? I do believe a little bit of more positivity of the blockchain, right? Like some strength that's not just dependent on Richard's SAC funds, right? Like some organic growth and the proof of it's not going anywhere, like the feeling that people get with Ethereum, right? The foundations behind it, you can very much feel that is not going anywhere. I actually believe PulseChain is one, if not the most decentralized or one of the most decentralized chains out there. But at the time, like, you still kind of feel a certain way that, hey, we need Richard to kind of do a few things for us for this to get real adoption. The truth is we don't need that. We just need to onboard and not lose our money to scams, and we would be actually doing pretty well right now. but sadly, this is kind of where we're at. We need to be realistic of it. So a little bit of adoption to the chain, and then pTGC's code just doing what it's been doing for what, another 2 years, another 4 years, another 5 years. If it keeps doing what it's been doing for that amount of time, I honestly believe some serious capital will start flowing into pTGC.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I agree as well.
And what it's continued to do, just by studying the data from the last 2 years and the type of volume it's done and the amount of value generation it's done with the type of liquidity it has, if that just picks up evenly with PulseChain increasing 10x and it can maintain those levels, it starts producing multiples of, nothing crazy without, human interaction coming in. But let's say it's very minimal human interaction. It's just the code doing what the code does. What I've found is numbers just like 4x a year. But if you can actually create sustainable systems that just keep buying and burning itself and increasing its price by 4x a year, that's unheard of. That's literally an unheard of store of value. Not saying it's going to keep increasing at that level. There's definitely an S curve to everything, but the human demand of that, people actually coming to store their value in this asset on top of what it just does mechanically, is the interesting part that we don't really, or we have seen what it does. Like that's the all-time high of pTGC is literally a couple $1 million just coming into the pTGC because people wanted to store their value in it. I can imagine this happening a lot as it proves itself more and more and more. But time is going to be that thing that we need. We need more cycles, more microcycles to keep playing out. But I do start to wonder, like, how many times does it have to do what it's done like 4 times now for people to be like, damn, like,
yeah,
this has happened 20 times in a row now, right? Or very similarly, like, I don't think every move up and then down of the general market, like you can actually directly correlate the highs of pTGC pretty close with every decent move upwards of value flowing into Ethereum, because the upward movements of Ethereum are directly correlated with PulseChain, and the upward movements of PulseChain are directly correlated with pTGC. So we could literally just zoom out and see, like, okay, we need to track ETH for the next few years, and every time you can feel value flowing into risk on assets, that's ETH going up. Let's correlate that with Pulse. Let's correlate that with pTGC. And do we continue to make higher highs off of all of those movements mechanically? And once we have more data like this, I agree with you. I think more people will start to feel confident and secure in storing value in it more long term, right? We need more data for that confidence to build.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think, I mean, what was everyone thinking? That they were going to put in $10,000 and after 6 months it was going to be $1 million? Like, it's not that easy to make that amount of money. And as you said, like, doing a 4x return per annum is unheard of if it becomes a safe haven of holding your investment. S&P 500, general stocks outside of crypto, you're looking at anywhere between 10 to 15% growth per annum, and that's good growth. So doing a 2, 3, 4x per annum is like amazing if it's sustainable, if it's secure, and we get it. It's crypto at the moment. It's very risk-on asset.
And just to kind of say what I meant on it, that was just mechanically what it was doing over what PulseChain was doing. So if PulseChain moved up 10x and then we just hold our constant, what we have in like our average for the last year as far as volume goes, that would be a 4x multiple over whatever Pulse does. So if Pulse did a 10x, if Pulse has done nothing, so where we've done more X's in that meantime is the human interaction side of it. But if you take away that human increase side of it, what we ended up with is like a 4x just from the mechanics. But then let's say PulseChain does a 10x and we do a 4x, no extra human interaction. The extra human interaction is another multiplier to those X's. But I like to not even include those numbers. Like, we're already at 40x, right? If that happened consistently and Richard was able to I think Richard has two ways, right? Richard can either try to just create something more sustainable that kind of just slowly chugs up against the market, or he's going to just go for that huge price appreciation again, and it will come hard down. These are the two options. I look at it, pTGC wins either way. Either we get the sustainable growth PLS, or we get a huge value increase and then a huge decrease. But what our system will do on the decrease is we'll constantly generate off of that volume and that volatility, and we'll find our own higher floor, right?
Well, I was going to say that, right? So it's proven. So we won't make lower lows. We will find a base. Yeah, it'll drop, but we'll find a base that'll be higher than the previous sort of spike up and down low. So, but let's just talk about that Zen for a second. So, just on that, like let's imagine the world of where Richard Hart goes through, right? Before, when we all sacrificed 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, before PulseChain was launched, people were saying that, the community, everyone outside of it, X did the 4,000X plus, yield and everything else. You can make it like an 8,000X. Let's just say that, everyone was talking in that time that PulseChain was going to do 1,000X. It was going to do more than 1,000X from the low to the top. So let's just say that there is that world where Richard Hart does spike it up in a month or 2 months and it absolutely starts tearing. And PulseChain does do that 1,000X. But let's say with the sell pressure and everything else that, pulls it down and everything else. And I think I put a post on this to Short Gates. I responded to one of his posts on X saying, what's your favorite coin on PulseChain? Well, straight away, I gave my reasoning as why pTGC is the one. And, if PulseChain was even to do a tenth of that 1,000X, you could see pTGC with the multiplier doing upwards of 500X. But 500X seems like huge from this point in terms of wealth. And is it achievable? But it actually is achievable because the fact is that only brings pTGC to a price point from today. It only brings it to about 13 cents per pTGC. And
yeah, I've ran some simulations on this Excel sheet that I built, and with time and a remotely successful PulseChain, it's almost mind-blowing how quick pTGC can get to $1. There's no guarantee it will get to $1, right? PulseChain might not ever be successful. When PulseChain is successful, everyone might just start dumping and running. I don't believe this is what's going to occur on PulseChain. I do believe when green candles start to come, if those green candles come from great news, if it comes from marketing, if it comes from gifts to everyone, or Richard putting a little bit of green candles, or maybe a little bit of everything above, I think it's actually going to be the opposite. I think value starts flowing into PulseChain alongside possibly a little bit of help with Richard, because this is how HEX happened. We've already actually have some data to actually relate this back to. Is I do think there was a little bit of a kickoff that happened from Richard, got the momentum going. Every flame needs a spark, and then there was so much value flowing into HEX. It was more value flowing in than it was value flowing out, and that's why price went up.
And so, do you remember with HEX, was that spark from, something like a big marketing push, something that we, are starting to get excited about now with what Richard's got lined up, to these postcards and everything else? I think it was.
It was a little bit of everything, right? There was a good foundation of YouTubers talking about HEX that believed in HEX as far as a protocol. There was Richard constantly on live streams educating people about what was going on, and then obviously as some green candles started popping up, it was the exact same thing Richard just recently posted about. When you're at these levels and some green candles and some marketing starts to appear, even the hate, okay, and then it starts going some more, and then it starts going some more, and then what happens is usually Richard is pretty good. In the past, he was good about timing it with retail flowing into crypto. Well, what is retail going to flow into? It's going to flow into the most green, the loudest, the guy who's all over YouTube. People are going to go to YouTube and they're going to say, I need to learn about this in quick. Like I'm looking at ETH hitting all-time highs. I need to learn quick.
And quick.
They land on YouTube.
I think the bold statement there is learn about it quick, because when this starts happening, people who start hearing about it, they want to be the first ones to invest, into that narrative as they're hearing about it. So they will jump on board quickly. We can see, we know how quickly things turn in this space.
Yeah, I think really for someone to at least be educated enough to know what they're doing, they at least need a month, right? A solid good month of watching YouTube videos and a helping hand to kind of walk them through. So I honestly think we're going to do very, very well in that situation, because right now we have a good, strong group of well-educated people in crypto right here with pTGC for when that event takes place. I think we're going to be able to not only grab a good portion of retail flowing into crypto, but also help them, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
more with Bananas videos every week, and live streaming and teaching everyone how to actually get into pTGC and UFO and how the mechanics actually work and everything. It's like what this community is doing here, the sub community is awesome. Be able to onboard new investors.
Because when retail starts flowing back in, obviously, how I look at it is it's good, sustainable, good projects versus pretty much scams, right? What scams are trying to do is the same exact thing. They're also trying to get the attention of retail, but their goal is to get the retail funds into their pockets, and then those scammers are literally just taking that value right out of crypto and then just doing whatever they want in this world. Well, for one, that doesn't help the crypto's price, because it just literally came in and then went out. And for two, that user just lost his money. So how are we going to get adoption to crypto if everyone that just comes in that retail push just gets scammed? And
you can't. That's wealth extracting, and that's where wealth extracting is a terrible idea of how the world should operate. Like it's, but that's just the way it's been for the last 100 years in terms of a global financial system, and how how it all works, and it's flowed all the way down into the crypto industry, and just particularly at a much more cutthroat situation where it's very, very, very short term in and out. But I don't know. I really do believe that PulseChain, that Richard Hart is really trying to create an alternative financial system that it may not happen this cycle, but it may be born this cycle, and it just takes a time, like you said, Zen. It takes time for things to actually bake in, to actually get the fruits of the labor, but it just doesn't happen overnight. So a wealth generating system as opposed to a wealth extracting system, and pTGC being the index token of the cause and being at the core of it all, really at the core of it all, with an automated, trustless system that literally makes money on the highs and the lows and everything in between. It's just set up for, like, you don't want to miss out. You don't want to be taking all your wealth out of it, because it'll just leave you behind.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was a good point, right? Like anything good, anything that's like really, really good and awesome, it takes time and it takes hard work and energy. If it didn't take those things, everyone would just have it, right? It would be like, it's kind of like having a great, healthy body, good looking, healthy body. Like if this was easy and it didn't take time and hard work, everyone would just have a good, healthy body. But good things usually take hard work and time. And yeah, the whole entire thing might not be able to be fully complete by the end of the cycle. But I do believe by this cycle, we should have a better vision of what the end goal is, right? And I think that's what a lot of us are looking for, is like, hey, what is the vision? What's the end goal of this blockchain?
And you just, totally. And you just don't want it to be built on a house of cards. You want it to have a strong foundation. I mean, you've mentioned this like a million times before, but, building from the foundations up. pTGC has between UFO and all the other core tokens that, or even all the other tokens that it's decided to burn LP with, you know, the LP that's there, that the wealth can be taken out and not affect the system, you know, maybe short term, slightly over a 12-hour, 24-hour period, then straight back up to the price it was prior with people taking profits. It's just there. It's not a house of cards. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what RH has got in store in the next 1 to 2 months. That would be the spark of what we're talking about now, Zen. So, anyway, that's just wanted to get my thoughts on the whole situation. You know, I've been there. I was there 4 years ago. I was Liquidity. I came in at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. Coins were flying everywhere. I didn't know where to put my money. Threw it into assets like Phantom, different ones, but had already missed majority of the run. You know, you catch the last third of it, but you know, to actually see your wealth, you know, do that 10, 20, 50x, you need to be in position in it before it starts. Otherwise, you can't chase it. It's almost impossible. So, you know, been there, and, you know, but I just don't want to think of it as if I'm taking profits, someone else is losing. I don't want to think about it that way because that, yeah, it's a zero-sum game. You know, when someone buys, someone's got to sell, and, you know, the reverse as well. But you know, yeah, that's just the way I'm built. I still have that ideology or that vision of PulseChain being a sustainable system that is alternate to the current financial system that's out there, and we can actually keep our wealth safely invested in it without destroying ourselves, destroying everyone else, and taking all of our profits when PulseChain decides to do a 2, 5, 10x, you know, and all these cheats are getting out early, and then if everyone had that mentality, then yeah, it just would have worked. But I think the amount of pain that we've all gone through, I think getting all of those cheats out, all of that had to happen, and you can't just think that you're going to turn $10,000 into $1 million over a 6-month period and for it to be easy. Because if it was, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah, I think it's possible, right? Like just getting the right timing. We could be very close to this time. We could be very far away from this time. I do think with Richard bringing up that 1 to 2 month window a few times now, not saying it's going to happen that 1 to 2 month window, but I do think that 1 to 2 month window is very important. I think we're going to have a lot of cool things coming out as far as great talking points, great community building points, good motivation for our ecosystem here soon.
Totally, Zen. And I mean, like we've all been waiting a long time now. It hasn't been like we've been in this and been bleeding for a year, 1 year only. It's been, you know, we all know how long it's been. Yeah, and we are down at the very bottom of the price point for PulseChain. So, but coming to that precipice that Bitcoin's looking like it's, you know, it's consolidated above that 100K mark. It's ready to punch out, you know, and might have one more dip before it punches out. But then, you know, if everything plays out, you know, Ethereum's going to start doing well. This is the part of the cycle that Ethereum starts outperforming Bitcoin. And if that happens, like I said, Zen, we're just PulseChain just to leverage on Ethereum, and then strong sub ecosystems like pTGC and UFO are a leverage on PulseChain, but a sustainable leverage, not a house of cards, you know, no liquidity, no one can really take profits at the same time type leverage. It's real financial, you know, price appreciation and being able to take profits along the way.
You know, you mentioned Bitcoin dominance, Coon Dog. And I was
Bitcoin dominance, yeah.
Yep. And we closed out the month of June just about, an hour and a quarter ago, and it was in the red. So that's kind of
really?
Yeah, just a fuzz in the red, but we're in the green. We're in the green so far for July.
I'm not going to get too excited yet, but that's awesome. I'll have to check the chart straight up. But, I don't know. I know a few others will be jumping into that straight away.
We got a sliver of green.
Yeah,
And just to be clear, I don't ever intend on exiting large quantities of pTGC or UFO. I'm talking about just taking the profits. You know what I mean?
Banana, why would you? Like, for your point, and I'm just backing yours and Zen's, points all the time, that even in a downturn, your money is making money if you don't extract it. So why would you go and take it away? It's just, you're literally just shooting yourself in the foot.
Sure. Yep.
So,
I know what you're saying. Yep. I'm. Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be playing well with others.
Totally. But I really do feel, and I know we've been speaking like this for a couple of months now, because these drawdowns in Bitcoin have taken, I don't know, compared to the last cycle, I feel like they've taken a lot longer. Like, we'll have a run, and then we'll have a sideways, but then we'll have a pullback, sideways and pullback. And the sideways and pullback have taken like 6 to 9 months. So we don't really have too much price appreciation. You've got to wait that 6 to 9 months, for then the next leg up. And I'm hoping that the next leg up is pretty close now. And maybe Bitcoin does take a pullback again. And, it's in that flag above that 100K level. But if it goes from where it's at now to about 107K, it drops back down to closer to 100K, that might be the last pullback it has. And then straight away it starts breaking out of that channel, that flag, and then it just shoots up to, 115, 116, 120, and Ethereum just starts kicking ass and outperforming it. And that's when we're going to start. But Richard Hart, being the master of timing and everything, with his marketing push and these postcards or whatever they are, whatever's going to happen with them, if he comes up with a genius plan of like bypassing all the bullshit and getting new investors straight into PulseChain, not even getting them, having to go through BTC or Ethereum and, investing into those core, like key, crypto and initial sort of blue chip assets first, but just bringing them straight into PulseChain, that might be the catalyst for it all.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys, I've got to drop off for 1 sec. I'll just listen in the background.
Sure.
Thanks for coming up, good dog. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I saw a stream with RH Max and SJ, and SJ has a little bit more information than the average person on this marketing thing. She was talking about how she knows what it says on the front of the item. I don't know if a lot of people know that already or not, but I found that super interesting. That she has a little bit more information than the general public for sure, which then she's providing it to us. So then we know, but she obviously got it from somewhere. So I thought that was super cool. Did you hear about that, Banana?
Yes, I did hear about that. I saw that this morning. I think she posted, or somebody posted a video of her talking about it on X.
Yeah, so I find that interesting, right? She's getting this information from somewhere, obviously given the AOK to share some of it. So I think we're going to slowly get a little bit more information over time on like what the game plan is and how these pieces are going to be marketed. I forget what she said. It had something to do with free tokens, right? Which me personally, I think it's just talking about the copies that everyone has in their wallet if you were in any crypto and you had it on MetaMask or whatever, you have free copies. I definitely think that's good information to get out there to the general public. Obviously, it probably won't apply to a lot of people because most general publics don't have MetaMask wallets, etc. Some people think it's a little bit more like he's literally going to give away free tokens to people. Could be. Like I said, I don't know what the language means. But also on there it says, and new tokens from pump.tires. So on the front of this thing, it also advertises, I think, his pump.tires tokens, possibly, who knows, and then Hex and PulseChain.com, I think she said. So I thought all that was pretty interesting. We're slowly getting a little bit more info on what this thing is. So on the front of it, it sounds like it's large enough to read out some information. So.
Yeah, somebody's got intel on it. I don't know that anybody has seen the packages yet, but somebody's good. I mean, as soon as anybody in PulseChain as soon as anybody gets their hands on those packages, they're going to pop them up on Twitter. We're going to see them eventually. It may be after they hit mailboxes, and that'll be fine too. But so I saw Ty in here. How's it going, Ty?
Thanks, man. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I watch your streams, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, doing a great job. Thank you for doing those.
It's my pleasure. People got to have a place to land when they come into this ecosystem. It's a little complicated.
Yeah, I mean, onboarding is a challenge for the newcomer to crypto. So I would really like a solution around onboarding, like part of the, yeah. Yeah.
Getting them over to PulseChain is the first step,
Right. Yeah, and doing all that correctly and all that.
Mm-hmm. I'm working on a video for that.
Definitely newcomers, right? We are ahead of the curve.
Yeah, well, whenever people come over to PulseChain, okay, let's just face it. At least 1 million people are going to get something in the mail, and they're going to do their research, and they're going to land on PulseChain. When they come to PulseChain, we need to be ready. So I'm working on a video to help people acclimate, help people get over to PulseChain. Like, how do you get money into PulseChain? Do you use a debit card? What site do you use it on? Are you coming over from an exchange? That's no coiners don't know any of that stuff. So they need to be walked by the hand through all that to get them over to PulseChain. And then, in my opinion, we owe it to them for them to land on the best tokens on the PulseChain, which would be RH tickers or the Grays currencies. Okay, I'm biased. I mean, look at the charts. The Grays currencies are, they're beating the pants off the other tokens. So we're an index. I mean, start with the index and then get acclimated. Know what you hold, perhaps, or just hold them. You start earning and then go mess around. Then go play around in the rest of the chain, right? So that's the goal. When they come over, get them into the Grays. And then if they want to jump into a stream and learn about how to stake and lock and how it all works, then that's great too. But if they just hold the tokens, that's step one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I was just thinking about. It's really, it sucks that Coinbase has the attitude that they do, where they want to charge you a massive amount of money to get listed, right? But really, they should be being proactive in scooping up PulseChain and making it available as a traded asset on their platform that they can make revenue off of, and go up with the appreciation of PulseChain. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they charge to get listed when in reality they should be the ones that should be rushing to
True.
build up their little platform.
True. Do you know what the fee is to get listed on Coinbase?
I think it's like $1 million.
What? I was gonna say, there's about to be potentially, a lot of people with fat pockets, fat bags that would be willing to just pay the fee, but
Yeah.
that'd be a lot of cheese, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, something I'd like to see, but we'll see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I remember correctly, Richard has already made it clear that he doesn't want to pay the fee to get listed on the platform. If I remember correctly, it was like we can do it without them.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I think I keep hearing whispers of a Binance listing.
Wow, that would be incredible.
And if Binance were to list, I imagine that would put pressure on the other exchanges.
Yeah. And I would applaud Binance by taking a calculated move. And really, that's something I want to highlight real quick, right? When you see someone like Binance and they're going to make a move, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they do, isn't that just confirmation, right? Like you see some of these really smart people and you watch what they do, like really that's confirmation to me.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So we'll see. Yeah, you also have to consider a lot of times when assets start to get their listings, a lot of those times some of their high points, right? And then they actually very quickly after that go into a consolidation period, sometimes even making lower lows. A lot of them do go and make higher highs if they actually have sustainability and stuff like that. But a lot of the meme tokens, when they make it onto listings and stuff, it's not because of any reason besides there's lots of volume and they're willing to give the tokens for free for the most part, and then the exchange gets to pretty much generate revenue off of all that volume because they're trending, and they got the asset for free anyway. So it's a win-win situation. They're making the fee off of the volume and people wanting to buy it off of their exchange, and they got the asset for free. A lot of times this marks the highs of a token. So since there is little volume, a little demand on PulseChain right now, it doesn't make sense for them to list it, right? Even if we give it to them for free, because the volume isn't necessarily there. What they're in the game of is not speculating on new assets early. They're in the game of waiting until they have their own demand and volume, listing them then, and then charging the users to buy and sell on their platform.
Okay.
It's a little bit different of an industry than a lot of people think. You think they would want to get into asset early and hold that asset and let it go up. They don't really care that much about the price appreciation of the asset. They care about generating revenue off of the user, off of it shipping sideways for the most part.
And they want something that's
tons of volume. A lot of people trade.
Right. Yeah.
Which I believe we're going to get there. And then they're going to have to make the decision, do they want to make revenue off of it or not, right? If we have the volume, that the demand side, that gives us a reason to exist on exchanges. I honestly hope a great on-ramp gets developed by, I hope Richard's team personally, because I would feel like I could trust something like that, even though I hope it's built in a somewhat trustless way. Just some onboarding tool, if it's an exchange, maybe ran by Richard, just kind of like how Binance did it, to where value that gets generated off the exchange goes back to the BNB token price. That model obviously has proven to work very, very good. Richard's been known to kind of, if he doesn't get help by other entities in crypto, he's known for just building his own, or his community just building their own. This is how PulseChain came about. This is how PulseX's came about, etc. I really hope we get pushed to that level to where we just create a solution that's good on our own. Right now we have solutions, they're just not that good. And if you don't have a good solution, it's really hard to get adoption, right? Like Bitcoin was really difficult to get good price appreciation when it was difficult to buy, right? Because it was hard to onboard someone to it unless they really wanted to know. And that was when there was zero competition. Now there's tons of competition. And there just needs to be an easier process for the retail, especially for mailing stuff to their house. I really hope that solution starts to show itself as these mailers go out, because I do think it is necessary. If we expect a retail person to go in, gosh, it would be awesome if there was just some on-ramp or something that we could just bring them right in the PulseChain with an app.
Yeah. I really hope so, man. You know, and yeah, it would make sense. I was thinking about it, like, if you think about this, right? How good are you going to be at something when you've done it once and you're going to do it again? And you don't want to keep doing it. You want this second time to be the final end all be all, one and done, right? So like think of X as the round one, PulseChain as the round two. I really think that Richard is really going to do, I personally think that we're going to see the most out of Richard that he probably has to be able to put out, right? I think we're going to see more effort out of him to do exactly that. I think he's really going to try to make it one and done, you know?
If you look at Bitcoin, right, Bitcoin had to solve all these things for themselves. And I believe that's why it's obviously just so large, is you don't need someone to get into something else to get to Bitcoin, right? It's user Bitcoin. That's pretty much it, right? It's just straight from the retail user. And that's why it works so well to just marketing to the general public, is because it's actually at this point not difficult for the general public to get involved. Like literally banks are going to start pushing this. So for us, like it's difficult because right now, like a lot of the education that we do is like kind of towards someone who's already in crypto, because getting in is so difficult. So we want them to have a little bit of knowledge. But the problem is that person's already in crypto. That person's already found his camp. He's already involved in some other asset, or he wouldn't even be here. So we're kind of trying to convert someone. And this is like a bold example, but we're literally trying to convert a Christian to become a Latter-day Saint. You know what I mean? It's like, to where a Latter-day Saint is knocking on random people's doors. They're just trying to convert anyone. They're not going to the Christian church and doing it that way. But you need a good onboarding process. You need it easy, because if it's difficult, most people, especially dealing with money in a world where it's hard to have a savings account, like the world's making it more difficult every single year. If someone is willing to put a portion of their value in a risky space, considered risky at this point, we need to make it as easy as possible. And just from retail to PulseChain, in my opinion, would be the best. No having the loop through Ethereum, which we could make it work. It's possible, but definitely difficult if they're just getting a piece of mail to their house.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
And it's worked. We've heard the stories we were talking about this last time from people who got a postcard in the mail and they got in through the postcard. And also someone saw a commercial and got in through a commercial. So it obviously is possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. We'll make that work if that's the only solution. But gosh, I think the impact, if it was an easy app or something like that, especially if that app was like by the team of Richard or close to Richard, kind of like Pump.Tires was very much by this team or close people to the team, etc. I think it would make a world of a difference for the chain.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to put that much into envelopes, it makes sense. You know,
It really kind of does.
You don't even need a ton of liquidity on it, right? Like you just let a market maker fix the price in the on-ramp or the exchange to the DEXs, especially if Richard's the one running the arbitrage bar, the market maker, just make those fees go back to the system or even pay himself for doing it, whatever. And if you can somehow link a wallet directly with that on-ramp to where instead of the users being with standard exchanges, they don't even like educate you on putting that crypto in a wallet, safe custody. They don't even want you to. They want you to keep it on their exchange because then they can use that value to generate more revenue, right? It's very similar to what banks do with the value put in the bank. They're using that value to make more value. They don't have it just sitting there for you at any time. They have an amount that's able for people to get their value in and out, but for the most part, all that value is getting put to work and they're getting most of the value off of it and you're getting a very small piece. This is very similar with exchanges. It would be interesting if there was an exchange that actually, in a way, funneled you to DeFi.
That's a very important point. I hadn't even considered that. You know, the people getting these postcards, not postcards, but little packages. I mean, if it is tokens that they need to go find, they're gonna have to. Richard knows he's gonna have to reduce the barrier to entry and make it very simple. So I wonder if he might have something pre-staged, ready to go, just so they can get over to PulseChain simply.
mm-hmm.
I imagine he must have something. He's definitely a guy with lots of surprises. I found that out.
Yeah, I bet if it is in the works, they'll just pop up one day, just like Punk Tires did. Oh, this is cool. Someone built this.
I know. Yeah, he's like, oh, by the way, guys, there's this. He's all chill about it. We're like, what?
So I don't know if we put our hands up or whatnot, but I have one or two thoughts if Perry, if you or Coach or someone, can maybe help me see my way clear on something.
Sure. Go ahead, man. What you got?
So just the first one is just a thought. I always think of myself when I got my first crypto asset on chain, not on an exchange, not in a. I'm trying to remember what it is. It was probably something like SafeMoon or something crap like that. I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. It was something weird. And I keep remembering kind of how my path was. I'm an IT guy, so I should know a lot of this stuff. I should be comfortable with it. And I remember the hardest challenge for me was, how do I get whatever it is I got to get to go and buy this thing I just heard of? And I think it was SafeMoon. How do I get there? And I eventually learned, okay, I got to get on an exchange and get some Ethereum, and I can move it to Ethereum. And I got to find another exchange, a DEXy thing or whatever that meant, and then swap it. And I'm wondering if one of the reasons we're not seeing a lot of volume on PulseChain is simply technology block. Like we've gotten to a point where people are very comfortable buying some Ethereum, pushing it to their wallets, and buying whatever it is they want. Not many people are comfortable with bridges, and even less people are comfortable like swapping that Ethereum to something else, to swap to something else, if that makes sense. And I'm wondering if that maybe is part of you going back to your point about a better way to on-ramp from, I've got $10, I want $10 worth of PulseChain. For me, that feels like an exchange to a new person. And I don't know if maybe I'm thinking about it too literally or.
Well, there's other downside, but you're absolutely right about the technical because, I had told a friend about pTGC and then it ran up and I called him and I was like, hey, did you get in? And he was like, no, I couldn't figure it out. Well, that sucks. Well, now you got another good opportunity, and so I'm gonna try again. But yeah,
now's the perfect time to buy.
There's the technology block, and then also if you're first onboarding, you got to drop $40 in ETH just to have enough money for gas in your wallet to allow it to even do a transaction. So there's $40 more. That's unexpected. And then, same thing for PulseChain. You got to have gas before you can do a transaction. So it's just these little hidden things that'll pop up that cost them money that they don't know about, that'll piss them off and ruin the experience for them. If they're not, fully educated about what they're trying to accomplish. I think a lot of people that get in probably have a friend that helps them, we should be very grateful for them.
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was coming from, is that it's that first step that's always the most perilous, because you can't just put 20 bucks in. You're going to be spending at least 50 bucks to get a little bit of a bag. But that was my first thought there. I think a better on-ramp where I can go from, I've got a credit card, I want a bag of PulseChain. That to me sounds like the first kind of big on-ramp step. And then the second thing that I was curious about is, we know that every single exchange that's out there, if you're trading Ethereum, they got a whole lot of free PulseChain assets. Is part of the reason why some of them may be a bit skittish or a bit reluctant to start offering PulseChain assets, is it potentially a tax concern, because they've got all those assets that are now worth money, and if they acknowledge it, do they have to take it into their books? Do they have to, as a company, will they have to do something like that, or?
Well, I plead the fifth.
and yeah, I mean, 100% following you on that one. But I'll give you an example. Like last year in 2024, Coinbase had something like 2-point-something million Ethereum, just in Ethereum, and then they've got to have like millions in other assets. They're probably sitting on $1 million wallet in PulseChain right now. And if they were to convert everything into PulseChain, they're probably sitting on close to $1 million.
Yeah, the way that I see it is that if you have, and I had a family member that this happened to, bought a bunch of Bitcoin, got, went up over 100K, they sold, they're like, yay, bought XRP, and I'm like, oh man.
Oh, that must hurt.
At least had a conversation, but whatever. People have to learn on their own, right? So I applaud them. But then they turn around and get hit with a tax statement, and you're like, oh my gosh. So I think the difference is that when you're on a centralized platform, just like the Gray was saying, that money actually isn't in a private wallet, it's in a reserve. And they're using that money to make more money. So they have to report their tax revenue. And because they're using your money, they make you have to pay the tax revenue. So because all the taxes that you pay on that money is less taxes that they have to pay. So they're offboarding a whole bunch of taxes to their users, right? And so I think that's why it gets reported to the IRS, is because you're on a platform like Robinhood. Whereas if you're on something like PulseX, you can swap from pTGC to USDC, and it never lands on anybody's, books, right?
Yeah, 100% with you on that. My thinking was more the exchanges wallet, because in terms of in a legal sense, they own the asset. And we've seen that happen with the exchanges that have fallen over. If you had, God forbid you had like money on Voyager or money on FTX or any of those exchanges, you became a creditor. You didn't actually own the asset when it got to court. In fact, FTX had a whole spiel where they claimed, yeah, we own this asset, that's in our T's and C's, and blah, 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 it was a whole mess. But my question is more, is their reluctance maybe tied to the fact that they are going to have a liability, not the customer?
Good question.
Like an how do you say, like
Well, that's such an interesting point because Richard won the SEC lawsuit.
exactly. You won the lawsuit based on like what it is and how it works.
And they didn't say, oh, you have to pay 40% taxes or mandate your users to, or
That's
not.
a good point. That's actually a good point.
They didn't mandate any of that. They certainly would have if they could have. Maybe they would have.
I mean, that could be an understanding thing. But with lawsuits, my understanding is if you don't put it in the lawsuit, you can't come back and claim, well, blah, 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 this is a new thing. As far as I understand lawsuits anyway, if you want to sue someone for something, if it's not in the suit, you've got to open a whole brand new thing.
I think this warrants me spending some time. I really hope I can get some time to read it and run it through ChatGPT and just try to educate around exactly what the lawsuit was about, because I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated in terms of how law has progressed to try and address the digital world, because it's not just crypto. I mean,
So here's a question. Was PulseX part of the lawsuit?
PulseChain was. I don't believe PulseX was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, I believe, PulseChain, PulseX, Hex, and Richard.
Oh, was it PulseX as well?
Yeah,
Sorry, I missed that.
I think so. I'm not positive.
It would be super cool if PulseX was in there, because then they didn't
clear.
mandate it. Like being a DEX, they didn't mandate it to tax reporting.
Yeah, and then I think earlier you were kind of talking about like the tokens, the PRC20s that some exchanges might have, why they haven't really touched them. I'd say a big thing about that is probably, for one, maybe they don't really think what's there right now is worth getting involved with, especially because if they were to get involved with it, let's say like put it on their exchange, for one, there's no volume even to these things. Like, it feels good when they have nice movements up on the chain, but they're having nice movements up because there's very little liquidity, not because there's actually a lot of volume on this chain. But if these actually turn into real assets over time and they show to actually have real volume that they can generate revenue off of, I'm sure that they'll, not sure, but I believe that they will tap into these assets they got for free and generate revenue off of them. Again, it's not about the speculation to them. It's about, hey, can I use this asset to generate revenue as our business model?
Yeah, but again, they're doing, a lot of the times, man, they're putting assets on their balance sheet that are just complete trash and have no volume at all, So it's interesting because I can bet you that if, like, for example, a Coinbase listed PulseChain, that it would immediately start getting more volume than a lot of the stuff that they list, that there's currently there's no question about it.
I was just like, so real quick, do you think, because I definitely know a lot of stuff that's listed there maybe doesn't have a lot of volume now, but maybe at one point did. But I was more under the assumption a lot of the stuff that gets listed on these, and correct me if I'm wrong, on these exchanges are tokens that they are getting for free and that hit certain volume levels at certain point, and they're like, hey, I can generate revenue off of this right now. That doesn't mean 4 months later that they're going to still be generating a lot of revenue off of it, because a lot of tokens do die off and hype in tokens do die off over time. So I'm sure there's tons of assets on their balance sheets that are just there as dead assets. But for the most part, I was more bringing up that, like, I think once PulseChain and other PulseChain assets get the volume that is appetizing for them to list to actually generate real revenue off of, there would be no reason why we didn't get listed, or some of our assets didn't get listed. Because it's about making money off of the volume for them.
That's good. We shouldn't be discouraged by not seeing it now.
But are you on that same page, Mando, or is
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we shouldn't be discouraged now by not seeing it, knowing that someday it may likely come. So, yeah.
Well, The first thing, 100% with a Coinbase is 1,000% legal compliance. So obviously up until this point, there has not been that. And that goes for all of the tier 1 centralized exchanges. So that's going to be, first and foremost. Secondly, technical security standards, like, they want to make sure that you got verified source code, standard library that they can look at everything. Like they're gonna scrutinize the living daylights out of most of the stuff that they're going to be putting on, right? And they're going to look at the size of the community. They're going to look at how much market is out there, because a lot.
Oops, I lost the space, guys. I was trying to kill the static, so bear with me. Sorry about that. I closed the whole tab down. The whole, you got this, I have little sections with multiple tabs.
Because there's a market on the sideline waiting for the business to open up. But it's 100% legal compliance. And I've seen Coinbase list trash, with like very little volume, just conceptual things, VC backed things, right? So they're either VC backed, they paid to get on, they passed legal compliance, they paid to get on, kind of a thing. Stuff will just completely die. You remember what they did with the Coinbase NFT? That thing just turned into basically a scam. So yeah, I definitely think that PulseChain, now that it's got the legal compliance there, and you're gonna start seeing more demand, that there shouldn't be an issue being picked up by these tier 1 exchanges at some point.
That's good to hear, man. That's really cool.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's about making money. These centralized exchanges really should be agnostic, right? I couldn't in a million years believe that a Coinbase would really give a damn about what Altcoin Daily says about Richard Hart. Especially when he's won.
Yeah, but it might be, just like looking at some of the videos in the past. I remember some videos where Richard's kind of trolled on the founder of Coinbase. So it could just be personal. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I think PulseChain gets on large exchanges pretty quickly if there's a reversal and a turnaround on this asset. I don't think that it'll get. I think it'll be fine. That's just my opinion, though. But 100%. The gentleman was talking about the case. It was all 3 assets plus Richard.
Mm-hmm. One thing that crossed my mind was that for pTGC and UFO holders, you're not just buying a token, you're buying a piece of a machine.
Yep.
Right? You're owning a piece of that machine. And so there it's something that you own and it's working for you. And you don't have to do anything and it's there. And I just thought that was really cool because so often we could just get thrown in the bucket with tokens, and it's like, we're not a token, we're a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Figuratively speaking, right?
I know exactly what you mean, and it's true. Each
They really built the machine, I think.
one is a piece of the machine, and we've always called it the machine.
Yep.
You know, Prairie knows. We've called it the machine since ever since we were able to start really seeing how it worked, right? Because we first had to start collecting data, and then it's like, wow, we're watching how the machine works. It just naturally kind of came out of that. But it is, I like that a lot.
It's a beautiful certificate of deposit with relaxed rules.
What's up, man? Absolutely.
What's up? I know when I first got into pTGC, like way back in the beginning, I was just watching how the chart would just absorb hits when the cores were kind of like not struggling, but just taking a little bit longer to recover. And so I was kind of almost betting off that on the front side, and then I started getting into the fundamentals of it. Then after my stake ended, I started still getting stake rewards. I was like, wow. I figured I'd reach out to one of the dev or someone, one of you guys in pTGC, and said, hey, if I don't end my stake, the day it ends, am I gonna get penalized after that? I said, no, it's still staked, but flexible, and you'll still get your rewards, etc., unless you have it locked. And that's just like a gift right there, that code. So.
Nice. Oh, thank you. I think personally for that. Yeah. Way cool. Yeah, I mean, locking, dude. I can't say much about it, but it's pretty neat.
What?
Nothing.
Man, don't do that, man.
No, I'm not.
See, you always be trying to come up here teasing everyone's ass. Up in here freaking Indian giving shit, man. Just
No, I'm not doing none of that. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that's not protected speech, talk about. Yeah, I know you can get in trouble with words that you say and stuff. You got to be careful on how you say stuff. And yeah, locking's cool because it's based on tokens, right? Not like the staking and the holding. So Perry's mentioned it many times where, what does that mean, right? What does it mean when the cycle peaks and, we're a year and a half in and all these 10-year locks start getting opened up, right? What does that look like? And it's just I'm not saying it's a possibility, right? That as it increases, I can see it accelerating, just the whole machine in general, right? So long-term holders that have multi-cycle plays, they're the ones that are really going to win, regardless of your bag size. That's where it's at, really. I think that, one thing I'm super grateful for is it's like a reset. For all those who didn't get on Bitcoin early, all those who didn't get on Ethereum early, this is a total gift reset chance for that to repeat.
Very true, yeah. And I think I remember hearing Prairie speaking. It was yesterday, the day before. I was listening, and he was saying, "So let's say we're at the top of the cycle, everything's blown up, and then these people take 100 million or 10 million out. They end their lock stake early, and they say, whatever, I'm up so much, I just lose 30%. Well, they did if you're locked, then you do the math, then if you get 1% of that, then boom, boom, boom. It just shows how that plays out. The one stake lockers just reap the harvest of the human instinct to take 1,000x profits with 30% hit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was pretty cool.
Based on volume, that was one of our ahas, you know, that we had was being based on volume, and really kind of with the DAO, like Greg was saying, like this really hasn't. It's not the system itself really hasn't been, you know, it's the first of its kind having a DAO, right? Having the liquidity web with the bots and the automation, you know, like to have both of those together is a first. And the DAO really is what makes it powerful. It really is. And as volume goes up, the DAO is going to go up. So the DAO is like super powerful. I think we haven't even seen the real power out of any component of this machine, to be honest with you. So like if you take all the things, you know, the human interaction, the bot interaction, the PulseChain going up, right? You take all of those and then you fold in all the other things on top of it, like deflationary, right? The fact that you're getting rewards on a deflationary asset, you know, it's just, there's so many layers, you know, that the DAO firing off, right? Locking firing off. Like there's so many layers that could compound really into something, I think, beyond expectation. I think it really has the potential to really go beyond the average expectation, because nobody's really going to think about it that deeply, right? Until the day comes and they see it all add up, right?
Yeah, how long did it take you guys to put that math together in the front side before launching the coin? Because whenever I hear just, you know, imitators, this can never be duplicated. But you hear those that yearn, or you know, that want just in love that they want to do, etc. I just like feel like saying, like, just don't try, just buy pTGC, just do what you do. Does that make any sense?
I suppose. I mean, yeah.
Because I haven't seen anything like it. And I remember when this hit its peak, and I was, it was at the point where it was 90% of my entire wallet. And
Nice.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I was struggling to just get back into the cores, just feeling like I just need to stay true to have some of the cores. And God, I was going around the city just like, oh my God, pTGC, stickers on my truck.
Dude, that's so cool.
pTGC coffee mug, coasters, blah, blah, blah. Upstairs, my wife's like, what's this Pikachu alien? Stop, just look at my phone. Stop asking me to look at your phone. But I've never gotten that feeling in for 3 years.
Yeah.
Except for with you guys, pTGC.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
forever grateful for that. Yeah, it got in towards the end of the first cycle, basically.
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
4 years. Wow, that's super cool.
3 or 4 years, yeah, man. So thank you guys very much. Still, let's say 40% of my bag, 50% of my bag, and let's take them box.
Yeah, and that was with what I call the mini pump, or the mini pump,
Yeah.
right? Where it was like pre-blockchain activation.
Yeah. 9, 10, 11, 10, 9.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard a story like that. I heard another person say that it became the most valuable asset in their wallet.
Yeah.
And you know that's cool.
Super cool.
Yeah.
You know what I find interesting about that, right, is like you're talking about how that made you feel and like how well it performed for you with just Pulse, like not even or just above Saturday.
Just doing it. Yeah.
Just a very small amount of value even inflowing to this blockchain. And there is no guarantee that there will be massive amounts of value flowing in this blockchain. If you believe in it, you believe that this blockchain will have a massive amount of success. I personally believe this blockchain will become very, it actually could become very successful very easily. And what will that turn PTGC into as far as the product is crazy, right? It's not guaranteed, right? There's always the chance that way more sellers than buyers, but we do have mechanics and systems put in play to pretty much buy out or replace any little amount of sell pressure that could come naturally. And then in the event of value flowing into the chain, every time in the past this has happened, it's happened twice pretty much now, we've actually seen a portion of the value that lands on this blockchain. And when I say value coming into the blockchain, you can easily see when that's happening. PLS's price going up. When PLS's price starts going up, that means there's new value flowing into the blockchain instead of value just flowing out. When the price is going down, that means more value flowing out than coming in. Every time we've seen value flow into the blockchain, we've seen portions of that value making its way to pTGC as just being a sustainable asset on this blockchain. This is just naturally what happens with markets. And that's created a massive X multiplier. And with the X multiplier on top of what the machine does alone, obviously you're kind of given a little speech of what that did for you. And the thing is like, that is just like a flick of what this system could actually become, like a very, very small amount. If this blockchain becomes actually what a lot of us believe it will become, that feeling and that amount can be amplified by hundreds of X's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if that's the case, I'm definitely got a lot closer to my heart to be able to handle that type of change in the bank. I remember I had a friend.
And that goes for locking, right? Because locking is such a unique utility and so powerful. Think about how many people, if they had the opportunity to lock their Bitcoin up, would have, right? It wasn't even an option, still I don't think is an option. But how many people probably would have locked some Bitcoin up just as hey, I don't know this is going to be where this will be in 10 years, but I'm willing to put out a portion or, a ladder or anything. Just that utility alone, or that code, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know if it's considered a utility, but that aspect of code is so powerful because it actually gives people a way to delay gratification to where normally after they hit certain X levels, they just can't stand the gains anymore and they take profits, right? And actually those gains are a lot smaller than people realize. Like a lot of times I hear people say like, oh, I got a 20X, I sold it all. And it's like, okay, but then Bitcoin ran another 1,000X on top of that. So you're talking about how you're staked and locked out, and I wanted to bring that up is like, if we see real adoption on this chain this cycle, and maybe not even this cycle, like multiple cycles after this cycle, right? The design of pTGC isn't just for this cycle, it's meant to be multi-cycle. And the reason it's designed to be multi-cycle is because that's when the real X's start to grow. You do X's this cycle with the X multiplier. If you can make it to the next cycle and you're relying on the X's you've done, and now PulseChain not only being a one cycle, but whatever the multiply of X's next cycle is, you start to hit some crazy numbers. Most people cannot hold on this amount of numbers unless you put some things in place to protect them from themselves. And Richard's really the thought leader on this with the locking mechanism. We just took the idea and tweaked it a little bit, but we'll see with having that kind of stuff in the store of value, how that expands out over time with the other features we have.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember the guy that first on board me, he had all stakes 5555. I just couldn't comprehend 15 years out. Like, why? And then the way he would say it is because this decentralized technology is so clean that it's almost, in a way, too futuristic. Like this could be the standard 5-10 years versus what we're probably going to experience the next 2 weeks, few months. But just the overall standard of finance, math, transparency, and decentralization, period, right? And
real quick, like think of your standard 401k. Like when people start paying into that, and that's like pretty much one of the biggest Ponzi's out there. and people pay into that for 40 years. To at the end of that 40 years, they get to the end and it's completely been annihilated by inflation. So I think it's, looking out that far ahead with your whole portfolio is maybe not the best idea, right? Like you don't want to lock out
exactly.
15 years, but I do think it's a unique strategy to, put possibly even just a little bit of value out into the future. And when you do get to that point in life, or if you get to your point in life, like life isn't guaranteed, it can be taken from you at any second. You might have something sitting there at the end that is greater than any other saving strategy that you can create with traditional assets.
Oh, no, 100%.
That's why I kind of, I don't like saying like telling people to, but I do think it's a unique strategy and a good strategy to consider creating a ladder with pTGC lock-in, right? Like definitely have part of your portfolio liquid in the way if that's what ladders, like definitely APY is liquid. We put pTGC in that way because even if you were to lock your whole entire position out, it is important to still have capital that sets you financially free in that time. Like you don't want to make your life super, super difficult so then you can't even reach the end goal. You need to get there. You can't, die on the street. But it is important to delay a little bit of that gratification. And people have been delaying gratifications with 401ks and savings account and stock investment accounts for a very long time. Like literally people have been delaying gratification, setting value aside for their future more than 15 years for a very, very long time. It just feels really difficult because it's a high speculative asset and it's crypto, it's new, it's not guaranteed really yet. But really these other things aren't guaranteed either. The more mainstream media or whatever you want to call it, just more mainstream makes you believe it's more guaranteed. But that's just because it financially helps them more than us putting our assets in more lucrative places that are more ran off of code and not by them.
Well, sure. And based on the way you guys set it up, I'm actually going to my staking website now, RiskReward.com. But the way you guys set it up, if hypothetically we all do get into this 7-figure, even 8-figure realm with the positives that happen, and your stake ended, the interest of what people are gaining just off of staking, you could literally survive all of and just lose. Just the foam on top of the cappuccino.
Yep.
That's the goal, right? If we can put everyone in enough X's to where their APY is enough for them to live financially free, and it becomes a more secure, more sustainable, and has better price appreciation than the assets that exist in the traditional world. Like, for example, where else would you put it? More traditional stock. You could get into property, but property has management. Property has taxes for not even doing anything with that property. There's a lot of things with these other assets that it's also good to diversify. I'm not saying don't diversify, but hopefully this asset becomes a better store of value than what exists in the real world. Because with code, we're able to take the things that have given real life assets and traditional assets value, real things like gold or property or stocks, like the same things that have made those things valuable, we've actually implemented within code and amplified all the things that have actually driven value to those assets. Scarcity, demand, value generation, like some people say like, oh, I don't like crypto. It's not a company. Like I want something that's generating revenue. Well, that doesn't actually fall into the category of all cryptos. On pTGC, I can specifically show people the amount of value it's generated in the last year. It's over millions of dollars. Just most tokens don't, right? So we've taken all the things that have actually given things value for not only the last 100 years, but technically thousands of years. Value's been around forever. And we're using code to amplify the parts that matter and ultimately kind of just push away from the things that don't really matter, like the tangible aspect of them.
It would be cool to
you know, because like right now we compare like, you know, the ratio, we compare market cap, but it would be cool to compare like the token, sorry, my brain does this.
Amen. Me too, dude. 40.
No, I had a really good point though. Oh, what is it? Oh, okay. So it would be cool to compare like the actual API out or APY output of these currencies compared to others that have an APY output, and just see how many X's in APY of a difference there is on data, right? And you could say, okay, this one delivers this many more X's on its APY all the time.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. So let me ask you, especially those like key opinion leader adjudicated, I mean, they all like looked at the data, voted on this is the cleanest, etc. My question is, so I'm sorry, if I'm looking at the staking portion of the website, right? I've always, when I see total TGC earned from holding, earned from staking, earned from locking, is that specifically talking about my specific wallet?
Yes.
Okay.
And then in those, so those are 3 boxes. The top left box, that's your total for all 3 of those put together.
Okay, total TGC earned, total all three put together. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So like, it's 75 million.
Yeah. So I mean, like, what happens if somebody has, you know, we'll use the example of like 30 million pTGC, and they have a 10-year lock, and they nuke that sucker, right? What does that mean when pTGC is like worth like a lot more, right? Put it in like the 20 to 30 cent range, right? Like, not out of reality, you know. And like, what does locking mean then when you're getting a token amount, right? So it's crazy to think what the peak could look like to holders, you know. Like you may gain more pTGC in that month than the rest of the time, you know, just from
totally.
locking. We'll say.
Totally, man.
It's possible.
You know what I was thinking about it today too? Like this cycle, we know as lockers that there's lockers, early end lockers. It's very sporadic. You know, you never know when you're going to get unlocking rewards. But I think as we go into the next up cycle, the locks they're going to be a lot more locks, and I think that the locking rewards will become more consistent.
Interesting.
Because I think as word gets out about how lucrative locking could be, then people are going to be interested in participating. You know, and word is
and that's a great point, Banana, because that's really why we wanted to make it so liquid. You know, call it liquid locking, liquid staking, where you're not time bound to like, you know, to where you're like that money's gone for 15 years. There's no anything, right? In some cases, so you can like get it back at any point in time. I think, you know, we felt like being liquid was a very important thing. So, like we designed this thing for the community, man, for sure.
We did. We definitely. Sorry, I got dropped off, but. Guys, before I ask Chloe, thank you guys so much. I just did the math on total TGC earned, holding, staking, locking. You all blessed me with just 20K out of thin air. So appreciate it.
Nice.
Thank you very much. I just can't get that feeling anywhere else, right? Just simple, clean. I say clean math because everybody's got math and algorithms, and none of it makes sense. It's not as clean in the website. It's not as clean. Everything's not just clean, crisp, and linear. And the last feeling I'll say before I go is there was no better feeling than knowing a red candle was going to get absolutely just crushed by pTGC before anything else did. That the system took a hit. And thank you again. Forever grateful. And God bless you guys.
That's so cool, man. You can't buy that.
I can't buy that, buddy. I can buy it probably with some of the extra coins y'all gave me, but
So cool.
I gotta lock that up. All right, thanks, guys. See y'all.
See ya.
Hey guys, I do only have 10 more minutes, so if anyone else has any questions or comments, conversations they want to add, feel free to. While I do have a set, I did want to remind everyone that we are trying to get our votes up on PLS Folio. It's free and you don't have to connect to anything. All you have to go over to plsfolio.com and go to pTGC and UFO and just click vote, and it just adds to the vote. Just trying to, as a community, that's over 1,000. So when people do start coming into PulseChain, we're holding that top rank as the top community asset on chain. It gets us on the front page of the website. So if you guys have a free second, you're looking at charts and percentages up anyways, you can go there, you vote for free. Don't got connect or anything. Doesn't cost any time really. We appreciate it. So
Then you can vote once per day. Pretty sweet.
Also, another thing you can do, doesn't cost anything. If you go onto secretobank.com, at any point you could add a gold ring like Prairie Banana around your name. When new users start coming into PulseChain, there is multiple ways we can get attention of new users over to Pulse or over to pTGC. And even when new users just start flowing in by us all having a gold ring or similar branding around our portfolios or profiles, it will start to get attention. And the more of us that are floating around, the more pTGC and UFO will get over time. And I think it helps overall create a clean image for our community. So if anyone does want to throw a gold ring around your PFP, you still get to keep your PFP as is. So you don't have to like give up, your little personal identity and stuff like that, but you can also support the ecosystem at the same time.
Yeah, and one thing I learned about Twitter Spaces, and I didn't even know this, but it makes perfect sense. Like you can put emojis, like when people are talking and something's really exciting, you can heart it, you can give a 100, you can laugh, you can raise your hand. All that stuff helps the algorithm too. And repost the spaces. Like when we start or when we post it on Twitter, repost it so more people get exposed or get an opportunity to jump in on, to our spaces.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, yeah, I'd say it's still probably worth it, even though we're shutting it down. But yeah, moving forward, if we can as a community, trying to put a little bit of effort in, retweeting, liking, etc. We're me and Banana both taking some time out of our day to come up here and help educate on pTGC and UFO. So if everyone can kind of help out and try to get new users to this platform, that would be awesome, especially when new users start flowing into crypto. The more engagement we're getting on these spaces, the more likely it is these users find this space, and we can help educate them and guide them in a decent direction when they land in crypto. So,
yep.
All right, guys. Yeah, if anyone has anything else you want to add right before we go, like I said, I have a few more minutes, but if we have nothing else, I can definitely shut it down a little bit.
I wanted to answer the guy's question about how long it's taken us for the math. And I can say at least 2 years, and then possibly another 6 months to a year. So maybe like 2.5, 3 years before we got it down.
That's a lot of time, dude. And I know from experience, anybody knows this, like when you spend a lot of time at something, you become a master at it. The more time, more focused intensity you put into something over time, you just get better. So PTGC and UFO weren't a meme. They're not a meme that was cooked up overnight.
Takes 10 years to become a master.
That's what they say.
That's cool.
10,000 hours, something like that. Yeah. So, wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah, we were really hoping for it to be a community-driven protocol where the community, somewhat similar to Dogecoin, where largely community-driven. That's kind of what we had in mind as far as its success and marketing and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's happening.
Yeah, I don't see why anyone wouldn't want that. We as people are just one person each. With the community, if the community is helping educate and promote and talk about the ecosystem in general, it makes the outreach that much bigger. If you have a holding count of 15,000, how many of them are actually active, I don't know. But let's say it's 5,000, 5,000 people compared to one person is an extreme larger amount of reach. So community is everything in these protocols. When value starts flowing the blockchain, the larger community, the louder our community is, it really does make a difference.
So Richard said he wants to make 1 million millionaires. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
So what's that going to do? So let's say he gets 1 million millionaires cycle, 2, right? That's all those people that are going to be telling everybody they know. And they're like, oh, I missed it. They're like, well, next cycle you can try it again. So I think the size of the community will probably just get bigger over cycles.
Yeah, you can bet on it.
Yeah. And there's there's data that suggests when you expand your community by a multiplier, you do an X to your volume.
Yeah, it's called Metcalfe's law. I believe if you I think it's like if you 10x your user base, you 100x the value of the asset, something like that. Which if you go to my Twitter and read the tweet from today, I touch on that in light of the mailer that's going out. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting, man. Yeah.
Yeah, go read that tweet. I mean, he is
exactly what I was.
Richard Hart is doing what I'm telling what's in the tweet is doing what the credit card companies do. Credit card companies, they target our children because they want those kids to get their card first. They become emotionally attached to it. It's my first card, and I'm going to be with this company for the rest of my life, because they reached out to me. Richard Hart is reaching out to the no coiners.
Very cool. Very interesting. We'll see what kind of effect it has.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say a few minutes ago that, that we got 15,000 wallet holders and in our community is a little bit quiet, it's going to liven up when the chain, when the chain kicks off, the community is going to explode. I ain't kidding. It'll happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think the larger community, the 50,000, the 250,000, I think there's just more people that are actively engaged. And that's probably why it looks like there's more content for those. But I think you're doing certainly equally the amount of work for the size of pTGC, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you guys are working your asses off.
For a
Which
time.
is cool. And it still takes like 2 hours to get through it. And sometimes you only explain parts of it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. That's why we're coming up with a book. So people can sit down on their chair or whatever in the couch and flip through and go through and get everything that they need on their timeline. Yeah.
Neat. That's so cool, Banana.
You guys have anything else before we shut it down?
I'm good. Nothing on nothing on YouTube.
All right, cool. Ty, thanks for coming up. Banana, thanks for co-hosting with me. Coondog, thanks for adding at the beginning of the space. I appreciate it. And Bran, thanks for coming up too and adding to the conversation. I'll shut it down now. See you guys.
All right.
Awesome, man.
See you, Zen. See you, Ty.
Bye, Zen.
All right, guys. That's it. I'm going to get some work done. Have a good week, guys. And if you got anybody that you're onboarded that wants to learn about the grays, send them to my AMA on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. I'll be presenting the grays. All right. See y'all later. Bye.